Alli and I are crushing it. Here we go. Disrupt
Crushing.
education. Here we just got done. If you went to, we're at last week's episode with Robert Peppo. I think you know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, pause this one, go back to that episode, and you're going to be inspired. But we're here now, Alli. Summertime, running, making some things happen. How are you crushing it?
Crushing it in the sky this summer. That is the story of the summer season for me is,
Hmm.
being a skydiving instructor. I still working towards my own skydiving goals of getting what is the highest license level, which is so skydiving license, you got A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
Um, I have a C license, but I'm going for the D license, which will allow me to be a tandem instructor. So you can be a different kind of instructor for solo students below that level, but to be a tandem instructor in the sky requires a minimum of 500 jumps
Hmm.
out of a plane, plus a whole other bunch of requirements. So the summer season is go time for me, which is so interesting because the summertime did not used to be go season for me, which we've kind of been talking about the last couple of weeks. And with Peppo, his summer season with the business and subs and people being outside and food trucks and
Hmm.
it's the summertime for him is his main season. So it's interesting to have switched seasons that are like the crushing it season versus the not. Because right for you just ended the school year. You're in
Yep.
summer bliss.
Yep.
And I mean, like skydiving is blissful. I'm not
Right.
saying it's not, it's a different kind of crushing it, but right, you're not in your quote unquote busy season right now.
Correct. Yeah. I like to, it's really cool that you said I have a goal, and your goal is to be the highest instructor there is. That's a weird, like highest, I'm thinking, 50,000 feet in the air. No, like the highest level that you can get. I like that you just went right there. And I think that's a great way to kick off this kind of recap of Peppo and kind of pulling ideas. In education, it's really interesting. I'm going to start with the story of a student who was in my entrepreneurship class, and it was one of his last days of high school. He runs a clothing brand, Inspire, INSPR. I think that's what it is. I will find his stuff and put it in the notes. And he's really trying to like figure it out. It's really fun because it's his playground, right? He's really starting to, understand things. And he's like, how do I create a network? Like, how do I connect with people? Because he's trying these new things, which I love it. Trying new things is what it's all about, especially in the summer if it's your downtime. And we were talking about, creating like ways, like who do you want to talk to? Like who do you want to meet? Who do you want to learn from? And obviously it's not just me, I'm just an entrepreneurship teacher in high school. So how do you want to broaden your horizons around fashion, whatever? And I gave him some hints. He's like, um, yeah, but it's easy for you because you're an educator, you've done this for so long. And I think I'm like, you just answered your own question because that's what Robert was saying, and I'm going to go right
Mm.
into that consistency. And then doing what people aren't doing, right? So know that like once you hear something in your own mind and you think that's going to be a long road and you talk yourself out of it, you didn't talk yourself out of becoming a D-level instructor for skydiving, right? So I'm like, you can have 1,000 connects if you consistently do it. You consistently set up a habit to do it. And I gave him some different options. One thing I love about kids is like if you want to talk to anybody, and if you're a student or if you're a parent of young people, it's easier for you to do that. All you have to do is say, I have an assignment. And my
Mhm.
assignment is to interview somebody who is in an interesting field that I am in, right? And like just reach out to people and start using it. And so, I think going into this whole like summertime piece is to build a consistency into your, whatever you want to get to by the fall. Robert was saying that all day long. It's like the
Mhm.
consistency will create, I don't know. That's what I love about the guy. Driven 2 years ago, you saw the change. So it's
I
amazing.
mean, that's why we had to have him on the podcast because we had him in. He was our starter for 2023,
Correct.
and then but we recorded it in 2022,
Hmm.
and so it was about like a year and a half went by, and we connect with a lot of our guests on social media because we already knew them or through the podcast we then follow them, and Robert stands out in big ways on social media because he's so consistent
Hmm.
and he is relentless at his goals. And so he's always been an inspiration for me ever since I met him through you and the
Hmm.
podcast in 2022. And he's somebody that he's so consistent, and there is this compounding interest and compounding time when you put in the work. So it's like that high school senior, right? They're like looking at it from the glass half empty or all the
Hmm.
way empty, right? Like, I don't have any of these things, so I can't do it. Well, I guarantee you, Robert Peppo did not start off with the business that he has now and his family. Like, it started with one sub and
Hmm.
one location, and that's still the foundation of his business and his work ethic. Is it's just like, we're gonna get it done, and we're going to show up every day, and consistency. And I think one of the big takeaways for me, and it's like, if you're not in the right headspace to hear this, like, you may have missed it. But Robert talked about how most people just stay stuck in the learning stage, himself included. He said he could have even been even further if he had just taken action on some of his goals. And I think for me, I needed to rehear that, and I'm sure many of our other listeners needed to hear that. Is there's I kind of see it as like three stages in mindset. There's a stage of, I can't do this,
Hmm.
so I'm not like, you're talking to me, you say I can do it, but I don't think I can, so it, like, in one ear out the other. I haven't even identified a problem because I have just put it to the side. Then there is this, I think I could do it, but I need more information. It's this like
Hmm.
information overload stage that is a trap, and it is a big trap in the digital information era, right? Like,
Yep.
you can spend your whole life learning stuff, just reading books, taking it in, and not taking any action. Personally guilty of this. It's like, I'm saying this for like myself, right? As
Hmm.
much as we're sharing this for our listeners. But in education, it's the same. It's the same. It's universal for students. Like, they can get caught in an information trap, an information loop that leads to no action, and it's just brain dumping information, and it's not going anywhere. And then when you cross the bridge into action, and you're like, I am going to take action on what I've learned. I'm done learning. I mean, like, you learn on the way, but you kind of are like, no more input. It's output now.
Hmm.
That's when the transformation really happens. And it doesn't matter what your goal is, or in education, what the vision is. If you're not taking direct action towards it, it's not going to happen. So you want to disrupt education, you want to change the way things are done, you can listen to this podcast all day long, and we can be that inspiration point, but it's going to require a shift into, like, you then taking action, connecting with these people, having the conversations, and then being like, okay, what's my next step, like, to make that change? Because we dish it out every week
Hmm.
with people that you can connect with, and projects and people and systems and organizations that are doing incredible work. And so, right, if you're like, I can't do this, right? And you're right. And if you say I can do this, you're right.
Yeah.
That was my big takeaway from Robert and hearing him talk again.
I like what you said about, I'm saying this to remind myself. I actually had that conversation with Robert just a few days ago. about how he posts almost every morning he's working out, like every, you know, and it's not an ego thing. And I had this conversation with him because I'm like, he was like, I post for myself, right? Kind of like what you said when you say it out loud for yourself and you're working on that. And then I'm also like, well, you also understand like you're actually motivating myself because I'm on a daily workout. I don't post it, but when I see you every morning, I remind myself that day I have to do my physical workout. It could be something else for somebody, but you're reminding people to stay consistent. Everybody's going to tell you it's hard, and it is. You're going to run in there. I see a lot of students see the social media piece, right? Consume, consume, consume. And then they just get stuck because they're like, I'll never be like this person. I can guarantee you 100% of those people, a lot of them are facading, meaning like they're just kind of, they're just putting a front up. But they have gone through absolute like chaos at different times in their life. Like everybody has, right? Even Robert. And I like how you say taking action because once you cross that bridge, again, another great analogy, Alli, is going across that bridge. Once you cross it and you get used to consistently taking action, and you get used to it, the first couple times is going to be hard. Like think about like maybe getting in front of somebody and talking to a group of people or something. That's hard for a lot of youth right now. But once they take that action, they do it again and again and again and again. It gets a roll going, right? And then you start like Robert's at a point where you set goals so high, like it doesn't even phase you the speed bumps at this point. It doesn't even exist in your mind that I can't do this, right? There will be times it comes up and you question yourself. But I think, for the series in the summer that we're talking, what we can take from Robert is look, like I know education, we talk like a lot of blockers and different things like that. I know in life there's a lot of blockers. But when you get to a point where you're out of excuses, there's only one way to go. And I also had that conversation with him is there a rock bottom or not necessarily a rock bottom, but an event that needs to happen to get people motivated? I'm not sure. That's a good question, but I think for just listening to him, he admitted, I don't know this part, and then ask. That was the second part that I wanted to ask you about, pun intended. But like asking people, okay, I can't do the technical stuff. Because do you remember when we did the podcast, like he was struggling, there was something wrong with his microphone and just wasn't working. He's like, he finally figured it out, but he's like, that's not my thing. But to understand that and then to ask, that's big. So yeah, talk about that part. We talked about the action. Now we talk about, okay, how do you ask when you're acting and then something goes wrong?
Well, that's so funny. The first lesson I would always start off with, since like my second year of teaching, when I found this, it was the deep ignorance. I think I have referred to it on the podcast, but it's been a while if I have. Basically, it was allowing students a space to be okay with saying, I don't know. And me as the educator leading the classroom to be like, if I do not know something about chemistry and physics and what we're learning about, I am not going to sit up here and act like I do. I'll say, I need to look that up. I need more information. I don't know. And the lesson was about like basically this idea that we're all deeply ignorant. There's very little that we know. And there's infinite stuff that we could know. But the gap is understanding what you know and what you don't know. And that's where the real growth can begin. And Robert said it in different words, right? One of his biggest strengths now is him staying in his lane and getting help for stuff that he's not the best at because he knows his strengths and he knows his weaknesses. People talk about, know your strengths and weaknesses, but it's like much more than a a superficial dive, like a survey that just gives you, basics. It takes a while, a lot of self-reflection to be self-aware enough to recognize I'm not the best at this. It's not easy for me. I struggle understanding it. And I have to work really hard to do it. I can, but like, is my time better spent on stuff that comes more naturally? Because there's probably somebody out in the world that can do the thing that I really struggle with, and they can do it from the back of their hand, not even
Mhm.
looking at it underwater while basket weaving. I mean, it's just like it's a huge component of, I think, the growth in schools is sometimes schools don't an education as a whole doesn't recognize its own strengths and weaknesses.
Mhm.
Like it just ignores them. Unlike stays with the status quo,
Yep.
right? So like what kind of an assessment, or rather, how powerful would an assessment be of a school to really deep dive and be like, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well at all that we need help with?
Yeah.
And where can we partner? How could we change the things that, like, collectively as a community, this is a gap area. There doesn't seem to be anybody or the right set of people to like make these changes. So we need help. And I think that's a really powerful like exercise that could instigate a lot of really positive change for a community and school district and school building, and even like a grade level or an individual classroom, whatever level you're at,
Right.
to be like, just to list it out and to really be like, this is what we're really, really good at. And this is what we're
Mhm.
not so good at. And we can do better with people that are better at it than us. There's a huge opportunity there.
That's a great lesson that we kind of learned from Robert. I got to ask you this. So, in the schools that you were at, do you remember we have the 5Es survey? Did you ever have the 5Es survey?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
that's pretty national survey.
Right. Okay. So, okay, that's a starting place, I think. I don't think that's the end all be all. And I think the schools that are stuck that's the end all be all, right? You have your five essentials, there's different areas and things like that. As a matter of fact, my wife was working at University of Chicago when they were formulating that whole piece. She wasn't a part of it, but she was in a different area of it. But like, I think that's a starting place. But I think a lot of times in Hello Summer, here we are, um, is like we look at that and then we're like, okay, well, we'll try to improve this E. Well, I think every E is huge. I think that's a macro. Now, let's talk about like educators, right? So maybe you have a team of third grade educators, or you have a team of math, like math one or algebra educators, or like us, we're a business team or an art team or whatever like that, right? Here's your chance to ask and act upon. Now, this is where I wanted to kind of hit on, what Robert does, because this is how when we started connecting and talking, um, this is how he like got a grander view. It was outside of his original network, right?
Hmm.
Because I think teachers, and if we're going to bring this back to straight education, teachers need to reach outside of their school during
Yep.
downtime, summer, right? Ask some questions to somebody who's just totally kicking some butt out there doing some crazy things, right? The George Kuroses of the world, right? Like ask that dude, like, what are you teaching? Or get into like conversations. You can do it on Instagram, you can do it on TikTok, you can do it in LinkedIn. You can follow people on YouTube and reach out. They'll get back to you. We do have a guest coming up that you can talk to about these things. We have a lot of guests. I mean, you can actually connect with any of our guests, as a matter of fact, and ask questions about these different things, because then you can start to take action, right? And I just you're so right about that. Like we've come to a point where there's so much information. There's so much information, and What do you got to choose to act on? And then how do we like listing that out? Like list out what do you think we want to do next year, right? A lot of educators, for some reason, don't like an administrator telling us we have to do it. I don't know. It's a thing. I kind of like it because it gets me thinking about things, right? Even if I, there's a lot of negativity around like professional learning groups and different things like that. And sometimes they're mismanaged, blah, blah, blah. But who cares? Like, how are we going to improve like our small team, right? And I think that is where Peppo's starting, right? He started with one store and he's already making the moves to make 5 stores in a food truck and all these different things. But he's also bringing in people who are curious, but they're not like necessarily just his original people. And that's we can do that in education. We can mirror that.
I mean, the walls of the school building may need to figuratively and maybe literally come down
Right.
sometimes. We can't be so isolated. We've had guests on that have shared, the power of community partnerships, and that is a continuing growth area and so much untapped opportunity
Mhm.
there. So for those who are listening, whether you're in quote unquote in the school building or outside looking in, you know, now is the time for either educators or those in the school building to look outwards, and because they have more time and space to do those, to have those conversations and create those connections. But like organizations and um, individuals that want to partner with the school, also, yeah, people maybe take off for the summer and they're less reliable, but I guarantee you there are people in every school building that check their email, that answer their phone, that,
Mhm.
want to make those connections. They want to make changes. Not every, there are people at the top of their game, which that's what we're getting at
Mhm.
this summer, who want to make change, who want to get it done in quote unquote the down season of school in order to ramp it up and have or be set up for really big changes for the upcoming however long the goal is.
Mhm.
And it really is the sandbox time that you like to put it in and just get after it.
Mhm.
Like reimagine what you can do. The possibilities of a clear goal to work towards and identifying your strengths and your weaknesses. You could make so many changes at any level
Mhm.
just by utilizing the slow season to prepare for the busy season.
Yeah. 100%. I think, kind of going into that with connecting community in the school. Here's a few ideas. If we want to start some people with some ideas here, Alli. Um, it's doesn't matter if you're business, science, English, whatever, right? Everybody's going to be out and about, right? Especially possibly in your school community, right? And just so here's how Robert and I got basically started. We're like, okay, so I teach this class. Um, what do you see with this class in your business, or what do you see in your organization? It doesn't even have to be business, but Robert and I were like, we kind of pulled it down, and just by talking to him, and somebody who's like, before we even ask you even ask me if I'm going to do it, the answer is going to be yes. If you have one person like that in your community, that's the person you want to grow with. And then it will start to span out. But what happens is we were like, I teach a web design class, right? I'm like, how's your website? And he's like, all right, well, it's funny because they're just starting to change it over. This was a year ago. And so I was like, okay, what if, because this is my expertise, I'm teaching students how to create and design websites, they do that for you. And then you are a person that is going to kind of give them feedback, real feedback. And we'll do that for a couple of weeks for a project. What does that sound like to you? That sounds great. Well, what do you expect out of this one? And then you start taking quick notes. And I got to tell you, Alli, this whole project was put together in less than a day. Okay. And it was a couple week project. And here's why, right? Number one, I had all the time in the world. And it was cool because I was out in the world talking to somebody, which is Robert. And number two, I used AI. Like it wasn't just like click, click, okay, it's done. I mean, you got to put in the work in AI to make it legit because it's going to spit out some robotic stuff to you. But then you go bounce back and forth, and there's Gemini on Google, there's ChatGPT, there's all these different places where you can do this. And then we implemented it. And I got to tell you, it was my students' favorite project of that semester, right? Because they're hands-on. Now, take one of your classes, times it by 6 or 7 of those, you got yourself a hell of a semester, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you can build with community and have that person come in, hopefully in person, but sometimes virtually, but really in person really makes a difference. Because then the student sees that there's value beyond grades and beyond test scores. There's value that the community sees in there. And I think that was an idea that Robert threw out there. And the reason why I wanted to say that now is because I asked, and then we made an action happen. And then basically we just, we're relentless on what we're going to do next and what can we do next time, yeah, you're going to have these one and dones, but if you set these things up, you're going to connect students to reality. um, I don't know. Did you do any of those things, while you were in school, while you were in the system, or even at the collegiate level?
But not to that level. But before I was in the school, and what actually like led me
Yep.
into teaching was my year of AmeriCorps.
Yes.
And I worked with this amazing, I believe Shay Cage still to this day does community like outreach and theater aspects. So partnered with the Minneapolis school system, and I was a coordinator with the hospital who was like funding it. It was like this, it was very much community and like local grassroots, and it was with a teacher in one of the schools that connected with Shay. And then Shay was like, I know this person in the uh hospital healthcare system that does community outreach that will
Hmm.
fund this to have kids um do performing arts after school with an after school activity, and then get them on a local theater stage promoting topics that they were interested in, that were important to their community. And like it was very, very full circle. And it started with a teacher talking to, I don't know the connection originally of how they knew Shay, but Shay was in the community, still very active in the Minneapolis community. And I just remember thinking like I ended up being the point person from AmeriCorps coordinating with the community outreach program in the hospital to like make the transportation happen, and like all the logistical stuff happen behind the scenes.
Hmm.
So like another idea is AmeriCorps volunteers are out there, and they're literally their job for their year or two of service is to make community connections. I was in
Hmm.
the schools, I was in the local community centers, rec centers, YMCA's, health centers, etc. Like there are community outreach programs. And if they have the opportunity to partner with schools in some capacity, they're definitely looking for that. And so there are these really cool programs happening that you may or may not know about already, right?
Hmm.
Like don't reinvent the wheel. There's
Right.
people doing these things. Maybe they want to do more of it.
Yeah.
And add it into the curriculum. This was an after school program. Cool. Like that's a great starting point. And like
Hmm.
that may be where you have to start before you can bring it into the classroom.
Hmm.
So I that's just another idea of ways you could crush it this summer and take action on those ideas that you want to have happen. I know if I went back into the classroom, I would totally try and partner with, different scientists or just people like even that you wouldn't think are scientists, but to kind of pull the veil, you're in the construction area and
Right.
in like the chemistry of cooking, of course. There's so much like that you could pull in a chef and be like, well, why do you pair these things together? Like,
Right.
what's the acidity? What's the like how are you using the stuff you maybe didn't like grasp in high school, but like now applies to your job. There's and English, like pull local writers. There's so many authors that would love to do like a book tour. I know at the elementary schools that's pretty common, but why not at the
Hmm.
middle school, high school level? History, man, I know you can't go back and like get Aristotle's point of view on something, but there are
There's some
historians.
AI out there that will do it though. Just saying.
Like be creative. Like there's
Right.
got to be a local historian or companies that are creating some kind of document. Like how do they put together these stories? And
Hmm.
just again, any kind of way you can literally break down the barriers
Yeah.
and have these conversations when you're quote unquote in the down season, but
100%.
we're turning the dial up.
Relentless. I love that. Crushing it. Those are two words that Robert always says, but you can do that. And guess what? I mean, we're in the summer world right now. I'm really excited, and I don't know what it is about me, but like I'm like you. I've got to be the best at what I am. I always go back to a Will Smith quote way back in the day where he's like, I can get on a treadmill and I will outrun you. I don't, if the best runners are around me, I'm going to be on that treadmill running and they will fall off. Like, no way. Like, that's the way I see it. It's fun when you get into that cross over the bridge of action. It really is. That's living. And I think that's what Robert was passing on to us. But we have an opportunity here in the summertime to really have moments to try some action, have the time to actually do some of this stuff, to play around in the sandbox, to build sandcastles and break them down and see what works and what doesn't work. And I think that time, the away from the box, and really just getting across and asking people, how do you do this? There's so much possibility out there. If you don't follow Robert, follow him because I'm going to be we'll be the early people to say, you're watching a multi-millionaire, maybe billionaire, if you're talking in terms of money, but somebody who's really challenging themselves in life in general and achieving goals, regardless of what they have, is really what you're going to see. But don't just sit there and consume, act on it. I think that's the biggest thing that we took from Robert Peppo. Are we missing anything, Alli, to wrap this one up?
I I wrote down this quote. I don't know. It's like a some kind of wives' tale or proverb or something.
Hmm.
But I was thinking about it when Robert was talking, and it's this idea that like if you're in a circle and you aren't inspired by the people around you, you're in a cage. You're
Hmm.
not in a circle.
Yeah.
And education can feel like a cage sometimes. And you can be uninspired. And I definitely went through the doldrums of being lackluster and not super inspired in my career.
Hmm.
But I, like you, in this season, which is why we're putting out this series, I'm in a very creative, inspired mode and am in a season where I'm like, I'm going after my goals. I will be relentless about them. There is no doubt in my mind. Um, for me, getting the D license for skydiving is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's most people do not do it in the time frame that I'm doing it in. It's very, very uncommon. But it's like I have this goal. I like really, really, really want to help women get into the sport of skydiving. And so having those ratings and being able to take people on their first solo skydive
Hmm.
and their first tandem skydive is what it requires. So like that's what I have to be relentless on in order to achieve that goal. And that is what we're putting out there. But we're also like, you and I, like, you have some big changes happening right now that you've been like working towards for a long time and have been relentless at building towards them. And so we're not just like sharing this, like we are sharing this for all of you, but we're sharing it for like us too, to keep us accountable towards our own goals and our own, reminders to get out there and crush it in every season. Because like sometimes we give out messages that we ourselves need to hear.
No, we need a lot of help.
Yeah, like that's why we're putting out this series, is to keep us, with the dial turned all the way up, and to keep going during the season. We just hope that it's inspiring and motivating for you to take action, to literally, like, we don't normally say this, but like, stop the podcast and go do something. We're at the end, but yeah, like that's what we're getting at here.
100%. That quote was from Nipsey Hussle, by the way. That's the rest in peace artist, amazing human being. And so I will let everybody know this, and this will be basically how I'm working. I am transitioning positions into another position, and I am working. I don't have to, quote unquote, start until early August. I'm already going. Like, that's, and you know what? It doesn't even feel like work. It's just like, let's go. And again, I'm going to go back to your crossing the bridge into action, Alli. That's where we're going to leave it. Turn this thing off, find that bridge, cross over into action, make some things happen, because that's where life is. And in the summertime, if you're an educator, you got a lot of life time to live your life right now. So go do that. We have a couple more guests coming up, so stay tuned if you need to be continually talking about this. We set this up, and like Alli said, it's a lot of it is for us. I mean, I get excited about these podcasts. It is a challenge. It is work. It is time out of our day. But I would tell you what, it is time well spent, because we move on to action after this. So for Alli Privitt, I'm Peter Hostrawser. Go take some action, ask people about things, and crush it this summer. We'll talk to you next time on the Disrupt Education Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co, or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrawser or Alli Privitt.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.